There is a definitive line where routine political theater ends and a genuine constitutional warning sign begins. When the head of the United States military apparatus sits before lawmakers and flat out struggles to answer fundamental questions about billions in taxpayer funds, combat readiness, or even his basic obedience to the Supreme Court, we cross that line. The recent showdown between Representative Maggie Goodlander and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth wasn't just another partisan sparring match. It was a surgical dismantling of bureaucratic spin. Goodlander forced a profound reality check, asking the one chilling question everyone was thinking: do the people trusted with America's national defense still believe they answer to the rule of law? As the pressure of her direct scrutiny mounted, transparency in that room completely evaporated. But to truly grasp the gravity of this constitutional clash, you can't just read about it. You need to see the tension, the dodging, and the relentless questioning for yourself. Watch the raw, unfiltered exchange between them unfold right here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. We have one really important thing in common. We all swore an oath to this great document, the United States Constitution. We swore that oath when we joined the military, and we swore that oath when we began the jobs that we're holding now. And I want to begin at the beginning of this document and at the beginning of your testimony, Mr. Hegseth. In the first sentence of your testimony, you said you're here today to testify about the fiscal year 2026 budget for the Department of Defense. You're required under law to submit this budget to the Congress because we've got the power of the purse, after all, by no later than the first Monday in February. Here we are in the second Thursday in June. We don't have your budget, as the chairman, the ranking member, and many of my colleagues on this committee have pointed out. You have testified that you want to be accountable for every dollar, every taxpayer dollar, and where it goes. We can't do our job without your budget. When can we expect your budget, Mr. Hegseth?
Well, as I also acknowledged in my opening remarks, in the first year of an administration, it does take more
Mr.
time,
Hegseth,
especially
please
while
reclaiming
you're
my
addressing
time.
the priorities of the previous administration.
When can we expect your budget?
You have details of it already, and you will have it very soon.
Can we expect the budget before the end of the month?
I would refer to Bryn, who's working that, but I know there are a great deal of detail that is already with the committee.
Okay, let the record reflect that you haven't given us a commitment, but you're required by law to do so. You're also required by law to pass an audit. That's been true since the 1990s. The Department of Defense is the only department that has continually failed an audit. You've committed to passing an audit in 2028, but we expect you to pass an audit this year and hope you will work with us to achieve that goal. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your testimony and what you've said about the threats that we face as the United States, threats from China, Russia, and Iran, and I want to ask briefly questions about each. Mr. Chairman, you've said that the Chinese Communist Party is advancing an unprecedented military modernization effort with cutting-edge technologies, including artificial intelligence. Do you agree that the United States military must have more powerful AI capabilities than China?
Well, ma'am, first, thank you also for your service in the Navy. I think LLMs and AI really underpinning all of our command and control capabilities is now and will be in the future a key and essential tool for decision making.
Thank you. I agree that American AI dominance is extremely important. Yes, Mr. Hegseth, should American AI dominance be up for negotiation with China in any trade talks that are underway?
As the chairman said, we're very focused on AI dominance. It's central to maintaining our cutting edge, and we're doing that.
Good. Well, I hope, will you commit to telling the president not to sacrifice American AI dominance in any of his negotiations with the Chinese?
The president is not surrendering any of our dominance to the Chinese.
Good. I'll take that as a yes, that you'll be advocating for that. Thank you very much. I hope you'll also, you've both spoken to the importance of competition in the defense industrial base. I agree with that deeply. I'd point out that 40% of small businesses have left our defense industrial base supply chain in the past decade, and trade wars that have caused unprecedented uncertainty are going to drive more small businesses out of business. And that's something I hope we can work together to try to prevent, because it's very real in my home state of New Hampshire. Mr. Hegseth, did you order a pause in offensive cyber operations against Russia?
That I know the story you're referring to, and it's false. We said it then, and I'll say it now.
So it is your testimony that you never ordered a pause in offensive cyber operations against Russia?
We did not.
Okay, let the record reflect that, and we'll be following up on that. I'm going to skip Iran because there's been a lot said in this hearing that has given me grave concern. One of the things that's been said in this hearing, Mr. Hegseth, was I want to give you the opportunity to correct the record and make clear that you will abide by, that you will obey a ruling of the United States Supreme Court.
I don't believe we have any cases pending before the Supreme Court right now.
I want to ask you, if will you abide by a ruling, by a decision of the United States Supreme Court if it is issued and you're asked to do so?
What I've said, and I'll repeat, is that district courts should not set the foreign policy of the United States of America.
Mr. Hegseth, this is a fundamental principle of the United States Constitution.
The core issue should have been Washington's most routine procedure, the budget. By law, the Department of Defense must present its financial requests annually, allowing Congress to scrutinize how public taxpayer funds are utilized. This is a fundamental constitutional mechanism where the executive branch proposes and the legislative branch reviews, ultimately controlling the nation's purse strings. Yet, months beyond the statutory deadline, the Pentagon had failed to deliver its complete budget for the 2026 fiscal year. Goodlander bypassed the usual pleasantries, anchoring the room to a unifying principle, their shared oath to the United States Constitution, emphasizing that loyalty belongs to the foundational document, not to a political party, a president, or a convenient narrative. This powerful introduction established that the hearing was about fundamental accountability, not mere spreadsheets or line items. Goodlander systematically dismantled the Secretary's opening statement, highlighting the irony that he was testifying about the 2026 defense budget, a document that was nowhere to be found. Without this critical financial blueprint, congressional oversight is reduced to dangerous guesswork, leaving lawmakers blind to which weapon systems are prioritized or how the world's most formidable military is allocating its capital. When directly asked when Congress could expect the budget, Hegseth delivered a classically evasive Washington response, sounding cooperative while avoiding any solid commitment. He attributed the delay to the transition between presidential administrations and vaguely promised that details were coming soon. However, when pushed to guarantee delivery by the end of the month, he entirely declined to commit. This absence of a timeline is profoundly consequential. The defense budget dictates military readiness, arms procurement, and international strategic planning, meaning any delay injects severe uncertainty across the entire defense ecosystem, impacting service members, contractors, and allied nations alike. Representative Goodlander ensured the official record captured this exact failure to provide a timeline or concrete answer, marking the first major crack in the Pentagon's defense. But the missing budget seamlessly led into an even more alarming structural issue, the Pentagon's chronic inability to pass a financial audit. For decades, the Department of Defense has stood alone as the sole major federal agency, persistently failing to fully account for its expenditures. It is staggering that the government's single largest consumer of taxpayer dollars cannot accurately trace where all its money goes. While such financial mismanagement would incite absolute uproar in any other workplace, inside Washington, it has disturbingly mutated into accepted background noise. Goodlander refused to accept this complacency, challenging the Pentagon's habit of perpetually kicking the accountability can down the road. The current institutional promise is to achieve a clean audit by 2028, a target that skeptics and watchdogs perceive as just another stalling maneuver to buy time rather than enact genuine reform. Her central thesis was potent. Accountability must be a present reality, not a future promise. By linking the tardy budget with the string of failed audits, Goodlander illuminated a troubling systemic pattern. She exposed a pervasive culture of deflection within the military apparatus, where leadership demands unwavering trust but steadfastly refuses to offer basic transparency. Having established this pattern of fiscal opacity, the Congresswoman escalated the stakes to immediate national security concerns, pivoting to the digital battlefield and the Russian Federation. Cyber warfare encompassing infrastructure attacks, election meddling, and system hacking is currently one of the most volatile arenas of global conflict, with Russia reigning as a primary adversary. Consequently, when public reports indicated that the Pentagon might have halted specific offensive cyber operations targeting Russia, it triggered massive alarm. Recognizing the explosive nature of this intelligence, Goodlander understood that diminishing pressure on a major rival during a period of high international tension carried enormous strategic implications. Was this a diplomatic back-channel maneuver, a political decision, or a critical strategic vulnerability? She confronted Hegseth directly, asking if he ordered a pause in offensive cyber operations against Russia. The gravity of the room shifted. This was a question of whether America's defensive posture had been secretly weakened. Hegseth issued a rapid, unequivocal denial, labeling the reporting as completely false. Yet this blunt rejection failed to dispel the underlying anxiety. Goodlander's objective was to put conflicting narratives on the record. Lawmakers had heard enough circulating concerns to ask publicly. If the reports were indeed false, the administration needed to explain the origin of such alarming confusion and project the confidence inherent in maintaining active cyber deterrence. Instead, the audience witnessed the continuation of an evasive tactic: issue a flat denial, move on, and deliberately avoid any contextual details. Refusing to let the momentum stall, Goodlander broadened the geopolitical scope, shifting focus from present threats to the future of warfare by bringing up China and artificial intelligence. The paradigm of modern combat is evolving at a breakneck pace, moving beyond traditional munitions toward machine learning, autonomous systems, drone swarms, and instantaneous decision speed. The next global military superpower won't necessarily possess the largest army, but rather the smartest systems. Grasping this reality, the Congresswoman asked Hegseth if he concurred that American AI superiority over China is an absolute necessity. While the Secretary comfortably affirmed the vital role of AI in command systems, Goodlander immediately laid a brilliant strategic trap. She pressed him on whether the United States' dominance in artificial intelligence would ever be used as a negotiable bargaining chip in trade talks with Beijing. This exceptionally astute question tapped into the profound anxieties of national security experts. The fear that short-term economic concessions or political wins might fatally compromise long-term military superiority, turning a trade deal today into a battlefield disadvantage tomorrow. Hegseth responded with generic comforting platitudes, insisting the administration was entirely focused on maintaining its edge and not surrendering to China. However, as was the theme of the day, concrete parameters were entirely absent. No definitive red lines or detailed visions were offered. Goodlander was not seeking mere praise for AI technology. She aimed to force a clear, unbreakable pledge that America's technological advantage would never be compromised. Ultimately, the exchange merely spotlighted the familiar chasm between political rhetoric and actionable precision. By this juncture, the proceedings had already unveiled a litany of real concerns: a missing budget, a broken audit culture, cyber ambiguity, and unanswered strategic questions, but the defining climax that changed the tone of everything was yet to come. The inquiry regarding the Supreme Court escalated a tense hearing into something monumental. Regardless of one's political leanings, the expectation that executive branch officials will comply with lawful court rulings is an uncontroversial bedrock of American governance. The foundational system of checks and balances collapses if branches refuse to respect each other's legitimate authority. Stripping away all legal complexity, Goodlander posed the simplest possible question: would he obey a ruling from the United States Supreme Court? This should have been an effortless affirmative, requiring zero political risk to validate the highest court in the land. Startlingly, Hegseth pivoted, complaining instead about district judges attempting to dictate foreign policy, entirely avoiding the heart of the constitutional question. In that chilling moment, The public wasn't just watching a congressional committee. They were witnessing a live demonstration of how fragile democratic norms can feel when aggressively tested by power. Goodlander simply asked if the defense secretary acknowledged a basic constitutional obligation, and his silence on a clear yes spoke far louder than any prepared statement could. The true strength of Goodlander's performance lay in her unshakable composure. She utilized no theatrical grandstanding. Her measured, precise delivery allowed the facts to do the heavy lifting, creating a remarkably sharp visual contrast. On one side of the dais sat a lawmaker firmly rooted in constitutional language and rigorous oversight responsibility, and on the other, a high-ranking cabinet member systematically dodging direct accountability. This confrontation struck such a deep chord because it laid bare a systemic pathology that increasingly distresses the American public. Powerful institutions demanding unwavering trust while aggressively resisting scrutiny. When leaders invoke patriotism to sidestep accountability, demand massive resources without transparency, and boast of strength while shrinking from simple answers, the entire system degrades. This matters deeply because the Pentagon is responsible for global deterrence, intelligence, coordination, and the very lives of service members. Uncertainty at the highest echelons cascades downward, unnerving troops, catching the attention of allies, and allowing adversaries to study the weakness. Goodlander's interrogation resonated far beyond the hearing room because she was effectively stress-testing the health of the system itself. Inquiring whether legal deadlines are real, whether audits are meaningful, if cyber deterrence is consistent, if technological leadership is protected, and if court rulings still matter are not partisan queries. They are foundational democratic questions. It was profoundly striking to watch a first-term legislator walk into a room with one of the government's most powerful officials and demand the exact direct scrutiny the electorate so desperately wishes more leaders would provide, devoid of performative outrage or cheap cable news sound bites. While headlines might fixate on a single viral clip or one awkward dodge, the overarching narrative is that of a government apparatus that views accountability as an inconvenience, desiring ultimate flexibility completely free from oversight. It highlighted a political culture where simply saying, "I don't know," or committing to a hard fact seems harder than ever. Yet, this very hearing proves that oversight and hard questions remain vital. The Constitution that Representative Goodlander so prominently referenced at the beginning is not self-enforcing. Its survival hinges on the courage of lawmakers to ask uncomfortable questions and the vigilance of citizens who refuse to accept evasive silence when answers do not come. The ultimate takeaway from this intense exchange was not just that one Congresswoman outmaneuvered a cabinet secretary, but that for a few vital minutes the system worked exactly as it was designed to. A public servant utilized the bright spotlight to relentlessly interrogate power on behalf of the people she represents, rendering the administration's lack of answers utterly impossible to ignore. That is the true face of accountability, not the promise of instant perfection or easy solutions, but the unwavering application of pressure, the demand for sunlight, and the absolute refusal to let power operate unquestioned. If you want to cut through the noise, stay ahead of the narrative, and understand the real forces shaping our national security, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now. You will not want to miss the explosive details we uncover next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.